Join me now from our bureau in New York City, field reporter for the Daily Caller, Jorge Ventura. Jorge, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, Stephanie.
And just to be clear, you're not an imposter. You're actually a real journalist.
Yes, I am the real reporter out there capturing all the chaos happening in Portland.
How many protests have you been to? Because I've been kind of trying to keep track with our video team over there at the Daily Caller, and you've been kind of all over the place from Washington, D.C. to Portland. Where else?
Yeah, so we also hit Seattle and Chaz. We were in Atlanta. We were at Occupy New York. We've kind of been all over the place. And by far, what's happening in Portland is so far the craziest things we've seen, just because how well organized these groups are, protests are, compared to the other cities we've been to.
Well, what do you mean crazy? I thought it was a street festival.
No. We've seen all types of stuff, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Well, while I was on the ground for 10 nights, we've seen stuff like fireworks, Molotov cocktails, and other explosives being thrown at the federal officers, also at the federal courthouse, which has not really been talked about in the mainstream media enough.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And you're a reporter, you're out there on the ground, and you're seeing it firsthand. What you're seeing versus what is being reported on, what's the big difference? What are people missing?
I think when you watch the CNN and New York Times and MSNBC, what you're getting is that the federal officers are just coming out and just shooting the crowd with rubber bullets and tear gassing people. That's not been the case since I've been on the ground. While we've been on the ground, usually what it starts off is around 9:30, the protesters are pretty calm, doing chants of Black Lives Matter, say her name, Breonna Taylor. And then usually when it gets later into the night, around 11 p.m., we then see the crowd start to focus purely on the federal courthouse. They will start to actually start fires on the federal courthouse building. They'll try to bring down the fencing. And we've been seeing a lot of fireworks and Molotov cocktails being thrown at the federal courthouse. This would usually draw out the federal officers in order to clear out the crowd to protect that area. We've been seeing that multiple nights. All the nights that I've been there, unlawful assemblies were declared. We had a riot declared one of the nights. But that's what's not being talked about enough, is that these protesters, this huge crowd, attacks this federal courthouse and is literally trying to set this building on fire. If it wasn't for the federal officers there, I think that courthouse would be gone right now.
So in the video we watched before I introduced you, we were hearing about Bibles being burned, American flags being burned. Do you hear much about George Floyd when you're out there? Or is that what protesters are talking about? Do you get a chance to talk to them? Because I'm wondering, what does that have to do with George Floyd? Why would you burn the American flag and burn a Bible?
Yeah, so the name George Floyd has kind of been lost in this chaos in Portland. Now, while I'm on the ground and I'm talking to folks, I'm asking them, hey, what exactly do you want? Do you want to abolish the police? Are you looking to defund by a certain percentage? The majority of the folks that I talk to on the ground now are actually looking for a total revolution of the system. So they actually want to throw the capitalist system, overthrow it, and they don't want Democrats and they don't want Republicans. So that's something that I think is not being talked about, is a lot of these folks are actually looking at this opportunity as a chance of revolution and to overthrow the current system in hand.
What are protesters like out there? Obviously, there are peaceful protesters who are just there, but then there are others who are agitators who are trying to start fights with police. I've seen some of the videos on social media. What have you witnessed? Do you get that sense that, or the vibe that they're trying to, get a reaction from officers?
Yeah, they are definitely trying to incite the violence. That's for what we've been seeing. One thing that the crowd will usually do to draw out the crowd of federal officers is they'll start multiple fires on the federal courthouse property. This will usually draw out a pretty big response. But every time that I've been on the ground, this huge crowd is actually looking for the fight. They have all these weapons on them. If you guys seen the video footage now, the protesters now also come in with shields. So they've used these shields to protect themselves with rubber bullets. And they're also now bringing power tool weapons to basically cut off the fencing in front of the federal courthouse. So it's definitely not a peaceful protest. Like I keep saying, a lot of these folks are looking at this as a moment for a revolution here in the United States.
I interviewed our colleague Shelby recently, I think it was last week, and she was telling me some of the things that she's experienced. She even sent me messages of some of the bruises she has from being out there. How dangerous is it? I was going to volunteer to go out there, but then I was like, coronavirus, the danger. I mean, what has happened to you?
Well, we're facing two types of danger, Stephanie. So one is with the group Antifa, the far left group. They're not the biggest fans of Daily Caller, as you guys know. So what they'll do is they'll stalk our social medias. They'll try to dox us. So for the folks who's not familiar with that word, is they'll try to put our personal information and then blast it out on Twitter and then tell their groups that if they see us filming or just doing our job as journalists, reporting or interviewing people, to literally beat us up or steal our phone. So it kind of forces us to kind of go in undercover. And then now, while we're also going undercover, we can't do the same type of reporting that we like to do. But now the federal officers, we look like Antifa, so now the federal officers kind of tie us in with that group. So now we have to dodge rubber bullets from one side, and then we have to dodge being kind of chased out by Antifa on the other. So that's the kind of things that we're battling on the ground as reporters for the Daily Caller.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.